Hannah's heart raced as she stood in the center of the gleaming courtroom, its walls made of pure crystal that seemed to reflect her own fragmented hopes. The room was cold, not just in temperature but in emotion. Around her, the genetic tribunal members sat in stark white robes, their pale faces showing zero compassion. She knew this moment would define everything. Years of preparation, years of hoping to be accepted in her society, were about to be crushed in mere minutes. The genetic scanner hovering above her was merciless, its blue light penetrating every cell of her body, searching for the tiniest imperfection. Her parents had warned her. "Be perfect," they'd say. "One mistake means everything ends." And now, those words echoed in her mind like a painful prophecy. The lead tribunal member, an elder with silver-streaked hair and eyes that looked like polished glass, leaned forward. His finger touched a holographic screen, scrolling through her genetic report. Each swipe felt like another nail in her coffin. "Cellular deviation detected," he announced, his voice devoid of any human warmth. 0.37% variance. From standard genetic profile. Hannah wanted to scream. 0.37%, that was nothing. A microscopic difference that meant absolutely everything in her world. In a society obsessed with genetic purity, even the smallest variation was considered a catastrophic failure. Her mind flashed back to her childhood. The endless tests, the constant monitoring, the pressure to be absolutely perfect. She had done everything right, studied harder than anyone, followed every single rule, maintained perfect physical condition, and now this tiny genetic hiccup would destroy everything. The tribunal didn't see humans, they saw data points, genetic sequences, potential risks to their pristine civilization. And she was about to become another statistic, another rejected individual sent into exile. Around her, the crystal walls seemed to close in. The holographic displays flickered with her genetic code, revealing her imperfections like a cruel art installation. Each member of the tribunal looked at her with the same cold, calculating gaze, as if she were a mathematical problem to be solved, not a living, breathing person. Hannah realized in that moment how utterly inhuman her society had become. They had reduced life to a mathematical equation, removing all traces of emotion, compassion, or individual potential. One microscopic cellular variation was enough to declare someone worthless. Her breath became shallow. Sweat formed on her forehead. This was it. Exile meant certain death, no resources, no support. Just a one-way ticket to a barren planet where survival was nearly impossible. The lead tribunal member raised his hand. The gesture would seal her fate: exile, rejection, complete elimination from their perfect society. But something inside Hannah refused to break. Even as tears threatened to fall, a spark of defiance burned in her eyes. She might be facing destruction, but she would face it with dignity. Little did she know, light years away, a human researcher was about to hear her story. And everything was about to change. The tribunal member's hand descended. Her sentence would be pronounced. Her life would end. Or so everyone thought. This moment wasn't just about Hannah. It was about to become a turning point for an entire civilization. Would you like me to continue with the next part in the same engaging, human-centric style? The communication array on David's research vessel crackled with an unexpected transmission. Most researchers would have ignored it, just another piece of cosmic noise. But David Rodriguez was different. Something about the encrypted signal caught his attention, pulling him away from his ongoing xenobiological studies. He'd spent years exploring forgotten corners of the galaxy, documenting civilizations most humans hadn't even imagined existed. His colleagues often joked that he was more comfortable among alien data streams than in human company. But David saw beauty in understanding, in connecting the dots between different species and cultures. The transmission slowly resolved on his screen. It wasn't just data, it was a story. A young woman's entire life reduced to a genetic sentencing report. Most would see technical information. David saw a human story. He zoomed in, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. The more he read, the more his blood began to boil. An entire civilization willing to discard a living, breathing individual because of microscopic genetic variations. It felt absurd. It felt wrong. David had seen dozens of alien societies during his research, but this level of genetic discrimination was something else entirely. These weren't just rules. This was a systematic elimination of individual potential. His research vessel, the Horizon Explorer, wasn't a military craft. It was designed for observation, documentation, and peaceful interaction. But something about this transmission triggered something deep inside him, a sense of justice, a protective instinct that went beyond scientific curiosity. He remembered his grandmother's stories, a Mexican immigrant who came to the United States with nothing but hope and determination. She'd always told him, "David, never let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. Your potential isn't measured by where you come from, but by what you're willing to do." Those words echoed in his mind as he studied Hannah's genetic report. The alien civilization's transmission system was complex, but not impenetrable. David had spent years breaking through communication barriers. This was just another puzzle waiting to be solved. He began preparing a response, not a formal diplomatic communication, not a scientific report, but a direct challenge to their entire system of genetic evaluation. Outside his ship's viewport, distant stars seemed to watch. Millions of light-years of cosmic history bore witness to what might become a pivotal moment of interspecies interaction. David didn't see this as a research opportunity. This was about something fundamental. Human beings had fought centuries of battles against discrimination, against systems that tried to reduce human worth to simplistic measurements. And here was another battle happening among the stars. His fingers moved quickly, designing a communication that would challenge the alien tribunal's entire philosophical framework. He would offer a solution they couldn't refuse, a traditional challenge that their own cultural protocols would force them to accept. The Horizon Explorer's communication systems hummed with potential. David took a deep breath. Whatever happened next would change everything, for Hannah, for his research, and potentially for two entire civilizations. One transmission, millions of possible futures. The stars outside seemed to hold their breath, waiting. Would you like me to continue with the next part in the same engaging, human-centric style? The moment David's challenge reached the Alien Council, the entire system seemed to pause. Challenging their genetic evaluation protocols was unprecedented. Most species would have backed down, intimidated by the intricate legal framework of this advanced civilization. But David understood something fundamental about challenges. They weren't just about winning, but about exposing fundamental flaws in thinking. The Alien Council deliberated for solar cycles. Their holographic chambers buzzed with heated discussions. Protocols dating back thousands of years required them to accept any formally presented challenge, especially one involving genetic potential. Evaluation. They selected Kara 7 deliberately, a planet so hostile that survival seemed mathematically impossible. Toxic atmospheric bands, magnetic storms that could dissolve organic matter within minutes, predatory ecosystems that transformed landscapes into death traps every few hours. This wasn't just a challenge. This was a calculated execution. Their reasoning was cold and logical. By choosing Kara 7, they would definitively prove that Hannah's genetic imperfections meant certain death. No species with cellular variations could survive such extreme conditions. It was a mathematical certainty. What they didn't know was that humans wrote their best stories when the odds were impossible. David began preparing Hannah for the challenge, not with advanced technology or genetic modifications, but with something far more powerful: human training, survival skills, psychological resilience, adaptability. He taught her how humans had survived impossible conditions throughout history, how early explorers crossed oceans in wooden ships, how mountaineers summited impossible peaks, how astronauts survived in the vacuum of space. Survival isn't about perfect genetics, David would explain. It's about creativity, problem-solving, teamwork, determination. Hannah listened, her eyes gradually changing, from fear to curiosity, from uncertainty to a growing sense of potential. The Alien Council watched, believing they were arranging an execution. They prepared detailed monitoring systems, expecting to document another genetic failure being eliminated. Little did they know they were about to witness something extraordinary. Kara 7 waited, a planet that had destroyed countless expeditions. A world that turned everything it touched into dust and memory. But this time something different was coming, a human. A supposedly imperfect individual, and a challenge that would redefine everything they understood about potential, survival, and life itself. The countdown to the survival trial began, and nothing would ever be the same again. Would you like me to continue with the next part in the same engaging, human-centric style? The moment they landed on Kara 7, the planet seemed to come alive with hostility. Toxic winds whipped around them, carrying microscopic particles that could shred unprotected. Skin in seconds. Magnetic storms created landscape-altering electrical discharges that turned rock into liquid and back again in moments. David moved with calculated precision, but it was Hana who surprised them both. Those genetic variations the tribunal had, condemned. They were actually subtle adaptations that allowed her skin to resist slightly more toxic exposure than a standard genetic profile. Watch the ground, David warned. Nothing here is what it seems. Their first challenge came within hours, a predatory ecosystem unlike anything they'd encountered. Living rock formations that absorbed organic matter, converting prey into energy. The Alien Council's monitoring systems tracked their every move, expecting imminent failure. Hana discovered something remarkable about herself. Where traditional genetic analysis saw weakness, she found strength. Her cellular structure allowed micro-adaptations that happened faster than standard biological responses. When David would need protective gear, she could survive moments longer. They weren't just surviving, they were learning the planet's impossible language. David used his human training, decades of wilderness survival knowledge combined with scientific understanding. He showed Hana how humans had always survived, not through perfection but through adaptation, creativity, and relentless determination. They constructed a shelter using materials most species would consider useless. Broken rock. Fragments compressed toxic dust, magnetic field manipulations. Each hour became a masterclass in survival. The Alien Council watched in growing disbelief. Their perfect genetic models couldn't predict what was happening. A human researcher and a supposedly imperfect individual were rewriting everything. They understood about survival. Toxic atmospheric bands that should have killed them within minutes became navigational challenges. Predatory ecosystems that consumed entire expeditions became puzzles to be solved. Where genetic perfection promised survival, human creativity delivered miracles. Hana discovered her supposed flaws were actually evolutionary advantages. Her cellular structure could process environmental stress differently. Where standard genetic models saw weakness, she found flexibility. David watched her transform, not just physically, but mentally. From a scared individual facing exile, she became a survivor, a problem solver, someone who understood that potential wasn't about perfect genetics but about spirit. Their communication became intuitive, a look, a gesture, a shared understanding that transcended language. They weren't just surviving together, they were becoming something more. The Alien Council's monitoring systems began sending unexpected data. Their predictions were falling apart. Mathematical certainties were becoming statistical impossibilities. Days passed. Challenges that should have killed them became stories of survival. Each moment was a middle finger to a system that believed potential could be measured by genetic markers. Hana realized something profound. Her differences weren't weaknesses. They were her greatest strength. David smiled. This was more than a survival challenge. This was a revolution happening on a microscopic scale. And Kara 7, a planet designed to destroy them, was becoming their greatest ally. Would you like me to continue with the next part in the same engaging, human-centric style? The moment Hana and David returned, everything changed. Their arrival wasn't just a return. It was a revolution packaged in human determination. The Alien Genetic Council had prepared a formal rejection, expecting another failed expedition. Instead, They received living proof that their entire system was fundamentally broken. Hana walked into the crystal chamber, transformed, not just physically but spiritually. Her experience on Kara 7 had burned away vulnerability, replacing it with something far more powerful, unshakable confidence. The head tribunal members' holographic display showed their data, impossible survival, statistics, adaptation rates that defied every mathematical model they'd ever created. Her genetic imperfections weren't errors. They were evolutionary miracles. David stood beside her, not as a protector, but as a witness. His research had become something more profound, a challenge to an entire civilization's understanding of potential. Genetic diversity isn't a flaw, he explained calmly. It's survival's greatest weapon. The Council's silence was deafening. Generations of belief were crumbling in moments. Their perfect, pristine society suddenly looked fragile, constructed, artificial. Hana's story spread quickly, not just as a survival tale, but as a fundamental challenge to everything they believed about worth. She became more than an individual. She became a symbol of potential beyond measurements. Young individuals across their civilization began questioning the rigid genetic protocols. If Hana could survive where perfect beings would fail, what did that mean about their understanding of life? The transformation wasn't just external, it was happening in minds, in cultural understanding, in the very fabric of their society. David had done more than save a life. He had introduced a revolutionary concept that potential cannot be measured by genetic markers, but by spirit, creativity, and determination. Scientific conferences erupted in debates. Research institutions reopened genetic studies. The precise, cold calculations that had defined their civilization were being rewritten. Hana became an ambassador of human philosophy, not through aggression, but through her very existence. She showed that differences weren't weaknesses, they were strengths waiting to be understood. The alien council, once immovable, now looked uncertain. Their centuries-old belief system was collapsing under the weight of human potential. Perfection, David would later explain in his groundbreaking research, is not about eliminating differences. It's about creating systems that celebrate them. Hana's journey became more than a personal story. It became a galactic narrative about understanding, adaptation, and the true meaning of potential. The stars had witnessed another human miracle, turning limitation into liberation. Would you like me to elaborate on any part of this transformative conclusion?